By 1700 BC, the Egyptian pharaoh commanded an empire of staggering scale. He possessed absolute political and economic authority over millions of people, a ruler widely revered by his subjects as a living, breathing god. But that total control vanishes in a single night. The pharaoh is plagued by a deeply unsettling nightmare. Standing by the river Nile, he watches 7 grotesque, emaciated cows emerge from the water, attack 7 healthy, fat cows, and devour them entirely. He falls back asleep, only to experience an identical theme. This time, 7 thin, withered ears of grain, blasted by the harsh east wind, sprout up and swallow 7 rank, full ears of grain. The pharaoh awakes to find his spirit deeply troubled. The most powerful man on earth is completely paralyzed, discovering that his immense political authority is entirely useless against the terrifying mysteries of a divine vision. Desperate for clarity, Pharaoh immediately issues a royal summons. He calls upon all the magicians of Egypt and the most elite, highly educated wise men in the royal court to interpret the visions. They listen to the dreams, and they fail. Out of the entire intellectual class of the empire, no one can offer the king an explanation. In the middle of this tense, heavy silence, the chief butler steps forward. He addresses the angry king to confess a fault he committed 2 years prior. The butler explains that while he and the chief baker were locked in the captain's dungeon, they both had deeply confusing dreams. A young 30-year-old Hebrew servant was imprisoned down there with them. They told him their dreams, and the young man interpreted them with terrifying, perfect accuracy. Hearing this, Pharaoh issues a swift command. Guards are sent to instantly retrieve this forgotten prisoner from the absolute bottom of the Egyptian penal system. The empire's greatest minds, residing in the luxury of the Golden Palace, have offered nothing but blank stares. Now, the king's only hope rests entirely on the proven insight of a captive rotting in a stone cell. The prisoner, Joseph, is pulled into the light. Because he is about to stand before the king, he undergoes a rapid, mandated physical transformation. He is hastily shaved and stripped of his prison rags, dressed instead in clean, appropriate garments. Moments later, he steps into the throne room. The lowest-ranking servant in the nation now stands face to face with the supreme ruler of the ancient world. Pharaoh does not waste time. He tells Joseph about his dream, the failure of his wise men, and directly states his demand. "I have heard say of thee that thou canst understand a dream to interpret it." Joseph's response is immediate. He rejects any personal credit, telling the king, "It is not in me. God shall give Pharaoh an answer of peace." In a room where the pharaoh himself is treated as a deity, Joseph openly defers to a higher divine authority. He establishes an entirely new power dynamic before the interpretation even begins. Joseph listens to the nightmares and explains their meaning. The 2 dreams are a single, unified warning from God about the immediate future of the region. The 7 fat cows and full ears represent an upward spike, 7 years of extreme agricultural abundance. But the thin cows and blasted ears represent the next phase. The chart plummets into a massive deficit. 7 years of famine will consume the land. Joseph explains why the dream was doubled. It means this event is firmly established by God, and the timeline will commence without delay. Having explained the dreams, Joseph makes a bold, unsolicited pivot. He stops acting as a spiritual messenger and immediately begins speaking as a state policymaker, proposing a massive emergency infrastructure plan. This diagram breaks down the specific mechanism of his macroeconomic strategy. Joseph advises Pharaoh to appoint officers to legally seize and store exactly 1/5, 20%, of all harvests generated during the 7 good years. This 20% tax will be stockpiled and kept under guard in the cities. It is strictly reserved as an emergency buffer to keep the nation from starving when the famine hits. Joseph explains the mystery, and then he delivers a masterclass in crisis management. He takes a guaranteed death sentence and hands the king a blueprint for national survival. Pharaoh recognizes the sheer brilliance of the strategy. He looks at his servants and asks if they could possibly find anyone else with the Spirit of God and the wisdom required to execute this massive logistical undertaking. The answer is obvious. Pharaoh physically transfers his absolute authority. He removes his own signet ring from his hand and places it directly onto Joseph's. The symbols of his sudden exaltation arrive rapidly. Joseph is arrayed in vestures of fine linen. A gold chain is placed about his neck, and he is paraded through the streets in the second chariot, as crowds are ordered to bow the knee. He is given a royal Egyptian name, Zaphnath-Paaneah. According to Pharaoh's word, no man in the land can lift a hand or foot without his permission. He is the undisputed ruler over the entire economy, second only to the throne itself. In a single day, relying entirely on his connection to divine revelation, a 30-year-old man goes from the damp floor of a royal dungeon to commanding the wealth and logistics of the world's most powerful empire. Joseph executes the plan flawlessly. Over the 7 plenteous years, the earth brings forth by handfuls. He gathers unimaginable quantities of grain in the cities, stockpiling it until the volume is without number, like the sand of the sea. Then, the 7 years of dearth arrive exactly as predicted. A devastating global shift occurs, crippling the earth's agriculture and causing widespread severe starvation in all surrounding lands. But inside Egypt, there is bread. When the people cry out, Joseph opens the massive storehouses. He sells the reserves to the Egyptians, and soon all countries are forced to travel into Egypt to buy grain from him. The survival of the ancient world hinged on the word of a man who, 24 hours earlier, had been a prisoner. His divine insight provided the only functioning infrastructure in a starving world.